All right, everyone, welcome back. So, today we are taking a look at the Phoenicians and the people of Nubia. All right, so to begin, we're looking at the Phoenicians. They are a people who first got started just north of Israel in a place called Phoenicia. You see it here on the northern part of the eastern coast of the Mediterranean. That would be like modern day, Syria is in that area. All right. So, going ahead and looking at the Phoenicians, some of the main things that we get to really talk about is, they were a colonizing people. Phoenicians, they were city-states, a lot of trading posts all over the Mediterranean coastline. We get one of the earliest alphabets that's like actual letters coming from the Phoenicians. They're going to found the city of Carthage, which is a huge deal in Roman history. This when Carthage is a factor. All right, and when we get to dealing with Carthage and Rome, when we get to Roman history in a number of lessons from now, uh, that's going to be fun for me because I love talking about Carthage, and hopefully that's entertaining for you guys as well. But since today's Phoenicia, we're talking about the Phoenicians. Some characteristics. They are really getting started about 5,000 years ago in around 3200 BCE is some of the earliest times that we have found evidence of the Phoenician city-states. A city-state is an independent city. So it's not like the state of Virginia. A city-state would be like Richmond and the surrounding area, like a couple, however many square miles of farmland outside of Richmond, so that it can support itself. That is a city state. Now, Phoenicia, they would have these city states all around the Mediterranean Sea. The most powerful ones are Tyre and Sidon, and we're going to see Gabel or Byblos, depending on what time period you're talking about that city. And there's also Baalbek, and they are the most spiritual religious centers for the Phoenicians. We're going to see the Phoenicians become known for their superb shipbuilding and their ability to trade with basically anyone. They had trade deals all over the ancient world. They were a seafaring people, and they knew how to make money doing what they love, which was sailing. We are going to also see them become known as the purple people because they manufactured a purple dye. And so their skin, like their hands and upper arms, well, their lower arms, like their forearms, would actually have like a purple tint to them because of like all the people who would work on making this purple dye, which was very desirable as a trade good. It could be used for paints, it could be used for dyeing clothing. you know it was a very useful product that they became known for. They would also trade in glass, which was difficult to manufacture in ancient times, especially in ancient times. Cedar, which was one of the harder woods to come by in some areas, and a bunch of other luxury goods that they would take from one place and bring to another, even if it wasn't theirs originally. Now, that alphabet that I mentioned is here on the right. So, if you want to see what your name would look like in Phoenician, go ahead and give it a shot. But for our purposes, we're going to continue. Now, a lot of the major cities of the region that the Phoenicians got their start in, which is, that northern part just above Israel, would eventually get conquered by Alexander the Great, which is really important to our Greek history. We'll be talking about the Greeks relatively soon. It's before Rome. But after Alexander's death, the region would become, prime real estate for the Romans to conquer. So these people, over time, are going to be subjugated by many, many other kingdoms. And yeah, so they had their time in the early human histories, but after they pretty much lost their prominence, they would be just subjects to others. Now, talking about Nubia or Kush, we have this map right here. If you remember from our discussion on Egypt, I told you that they are the region south of Egypt, down the Nile River. All right, so this map right here should put that into some more perspective for you. You would notice that they are in like the modern day country of Sudan, which is south of Egypt. Now, the main characteristics that you need to know about Nubia or Kush, as it's also known, is that they are a civilization that established itself in the upper Nile River, which is south of Egypt. Even though it's south, it's upper Nile River because it's where the river begins in the mountains of Sudan. Now, they are going to regain their independence from Egypt around the year 1100 BC. They're actually going to conquer Egypt around 751, at least for a little bit. But they're going to lose Egypt in about 80 years later to the Assyrians. So, yeah, they actually didn't do too bad. But because of their interaction, which there was a lot of interaction because of Nile River with the Egyptians, there is a ton of influence on the Nubians from Egypt. So the way that the royal families are revered, almost godlike, the writing system, the way the social classes are broken up, the way it's a centralized theocratic like government, is all very, very identical or very, very heavily influenced by the Egyptians. And one other random fact, they also were known for having seashells as bracelets and necklaces, like using them to make them, which was unique to cultures that were not like on the ocean or on the Mediterranean Sea where there was more access to stuff like that. Somehow they were able to become well known for these, even though they're a little bit more landlocked. All right. So that's actually kind of all the information that I have to give you on Nubia and Kush. But I'm going to give you guys a couple of images that you can look at to see some of those similarities with Egyptian culture. Like here, there's the different carvings and everything that look very similar to some of the stuff we saw with Egypt. The artwork is very similar, having hieroglyphics that have some similarities between them. They built pyramids. They weren't the smooth-sided ones like we see in Egypt, but they were step pyramids, and they built a lot of them just like Egypt. They had very similar style with the way that they dressed, a lot of the ceremonial aspects. They had a thing for the lion statues. Their temples actually would serve a slightly different purpose. Their pyramids were smaller, and they weren't always just tombs. Like they had a little bit more use than just being a monument to a dead person. All right. And one other thing that's a little different, if you read this little blip right here, you'll notice that the queens actually held more power than the kings in Nubia. They were more of a matriarchy than a patriarchy. The women had more power based on evidence that has been found. So there's some interesting stuff right there. All right, so that is where we're going to end today. And be sure to look over all of your ancient, civilization stuff, going from Mesopotamia through Nubia and Kush, because there will be a quiz coming up soon. And yeah, that's going to do it. Talk to you later, guys.